All right, welcome back, my friends, to Technology Sales Professional from Technology Six Figure Career Plan. We are going to talk about a great section, one of my personal favorites, and that is selling technology consulting. Because I love this. Here's the thing about selling consulting: you cover so much area, so much ground, it's super lucrative, it never gets boring, there's always opportunities. However, this is a tough one just to jump into without any experience. And as we get into talking about selling consulting, you sort of want to have a foundation in whatever you're selling. So if you work for a consulting firm and they focus on helping sell, let's say, healthcare systems, you probably should have a background in healthcare. If they sell different services around finance or HR, you should have some sort of background in that. Now, companies will hire folks out of college and train them up, and this is very common for the more elite firms. They'll hire people out of like really Ivy League schools, but you don't have to go that route. There's lots and lots of consulting opportunities out there. Often, however, people will transition into consulting when they're a little further down their career. And if you're selling consulting, you really need to have a foundation that's a little deeper than other sales roles. You have to have that experience in that industry so you can talk intelligently about it. Because when you're selling consulting, you're selling this thing that doesn't exist yet. You're selling the promise of a solution. Hey, trust us, we can do this for you. And in order to instill that level of trust, you really have to have that foundation so you can speak from a place of integrity. And if you don't have that, companies will not believe you. So you really, again, this isn't something maybe you would roll into right out of college, unless, of course, you got recruited and the consulting firm has a training program where they'll train you up. That's one way to go. The other way to go is that folks will generally get experience in a specific field and then get into consulting. So I do a lot of consulting, but I did a lot of hands-on work in different industries before I became a consultant. So I want to point that out before you get started. Now, it's worth taking a look at consulting, especially as a long-term strategy, because folks selling consulting crush it. They make a lot of money because it's such a huge industry. It's a $150 billion a year industry. And sales professionals of IT consulting services, they work with clients to help them integrate information technology systems in their business. But to do that, they really have to show the client how that system's going to save them money, make their employees more happy. You're going to them with a strategy. They're like, hey, I see you have this problem. Let my firm come in and we're going to work our magic and we're going to implement this system and you're going to give us a bunch of money and then everything's going to be great. You got to have that kind of core understanding of what you're going to implement and what you're selling in order to do that successfully. And it's a longer sales cycle. And it means a lot of building of relationships. You have to really have good long-term relationships to sell IT consulting services. Because again, the dollars are significant. Many of the projects I work on, I say I wouldn't work on a project less than $200,000. And that's a small project. A lot of projects are in the seven figures. So when you're going to a company saying, hey, we would like to do this work for you and we're going to charge you $1 million, they have to trust you. They have to feel integrity that you know what you're talking about. And that's one of the most critical aspects. So if you're thinking like, hey, I just want to jump into a sales job, consulting may not be the one right out the gate. However, if you're thinking, I have a lot of experience in my profession and I want to change careers so I can make a lot more money and have a lot more growth potential, then becoming a consultant and selling consulting is a great way to go. So definitely a little further on in life, a little more life experience, a little more professional experience to sell consulting. Now, the exception to that is there are a number of consulting firms like McKinsey and others who recruit out of college, but they tend to recruit really top level, high GPA from top level schools like Stanford or Ivy League schools for those type of roles. So if that's not you, I would say gain some experience in a particular field that you really love and then transition to consulting once you have that life and business experience and you feel like you can go out there and sell consulting services. So the sales professional who specializes in IT consulting services generally sells project-based work. In addition, that project, though, could include also the sale or implementation of a specific product or set of products. Hypothetically, again, we want to implement a new project management environment for you. And part of that's going to be software, part of it's going to be process and teaching your team and getting them educated on how to do that. So a lot of times those go hand in hand. And these projects will generally consist of a number of different resources. A project will generally have a project manager, a business systems analyst. It could have some developers on the tech side of the house, solutions architects who really understand the technology and who will work closely with the business analyst to figure out what the requirements are and then implement the different technical solution. And then QA folks to make sure that everything is working as it should. Also, though, you could have folks doing training. There's a big communication piece in there. So when you're implementing these projects, you generally have a pretty significant team, all of which have high billable hours that you're charging. So the real goal here is to put together a proposal for it that includes all these different pieces that allows you to walk away with a sizable profit after the project is completed. And that can be tricky because often, especially if you're doing a project where you haven't really done a specific, like maybe it's with a new technology, you don't know how things are going to go. So you've got to pad it and you've got to really understand what's going on and you got to know what kind of resources you're working with. And you have to have backup resources in case someone flakes on you, and you have to have a plan B all the time. There's a lot to doing projects. It's definitely a little riskier than selling other things. However, the margins are great, and it doesn't require a ton of overhead because often you'll go out there and find these resources for a project. What most folks do is they might have a couple core employees that they generally will run projects for them, and then they'll staff up other resources for the project and build them up at a markup. So it's great work. It's a little tricky though, and it's definitely something that you want to get some other experiences before you get out there and start selling consulting. Now, to sell IT consulting services, the sales profession's got to have that deep understanding as we've talked about. And the salespeople also have to, they're generally seasoned. I know I keep saying this, but I'm trying to get this one across. You really want to find, if you're interested in consulting, figure out how you can get experience as a consultant first and then transition to the sales part. That's what a lot of folks do, and that's where the money is. So maybe let's say that you're a project manager and you're working on projects and you've kind of capped out at what you can make. You're like, okay, I'm not going to make any more money as a PM, but you know what I could do? I could become a salesperson and now sell consulting services, and I could double what I'm making in a year. So that's what happens a lot. You see people who've worked on projects who are very experienced, and then often they'll move into sales. All right, again, all over the place. Base salary for these guys, they tend to have a higher base salary selling consulting services. It's not uncommon, especially because, again, they are bringing on professionals who have been in the field doing other things. So getting a salary, of $100K as a consulting sales professional, not that hard to do. And then there are guys out there selling services, consulting services are making $1 million a year. And I know that for a fact because I've met several of them. You can make a ton of money selling consulting. So I want you to think about, maybe you're on a different IT track and you're thinking about your future, and maybe you're in your 20s. Think about this when you're in your 30s. Like, you've been in the field, you've gotten 7, 8, 10 years experience, and now you're like, okay, I'm ready to make that cash money. What can I do? Then go into selling consulting services. And especially if you get on with a good company, you can do very well. It is stressful, not going to lie. Selling consulting services, very competitive, very stressful. You're at the whim of the client all the time. A lot of money on the line. And at the end of the day, you are the single, as they say, the single throat to choke. That comes down to you as the person managing the account. So with all the money potential comes a lot of stress. So this job is not for the faint of heart. You got to be competitive. You have to be aggressive. All those different traits that we listed as a technical sales professional, they are all doubly true for selling consulting services. All right, so takeaways. This is a great career move once you're a little more senior, once you've gotten some experience, and especially if you've been working as a consultant, working as a technologist, and you're looking to up your game financially downstream, a little further on in your career. This is a great path to go to make money. Not for the faint of heart, definitely competitive, a little stressful, but if you're like, all right, I'm a little further in my career, I really need to start banking some money, I want to be more challenged, I want to grow, getting into consulting sales is a great way to go about it. All right, stick around for our next module. The next module we're going to cover is one that's going to allow you, if you're interested in technology sales, it's the one that will get you there the fastest. So stay with us.